Hello and welcome. This is the Zen community of Oregon, making the teachings of the Buddha Dharma accessible to support your practice. New episodes air every week.
We just finished a week-long retreat up at Great Vow, and we finished a week ceremony of Denkai. It's a kind of transmission ceremony. And then we did six Jukai ceremonies, 6 people taking the precepts. So we did a lot of taking refuge in the Buddha Dharma and Sangha over this last week with, 150 people or so. And of course, taking refuge in Buddha Dharma and Sangha means taking refuge in one's own heart, one's own presence, the truth that is within us, the goodness that's inside us. We've been talking about the art of living. And again, I encourage you, if you haven't had a copy of this, it's online. You can get a digital copy. You can get a copy through Amazon and other places. It's a wonderful book. And again, it was a book that was taken from Thich Naht Hanh's last retreat at Plum Village in France, before he had his massive stroke, and it was like a 2 or 3 week retreat on birth and death. And so then his disciples, after his stroke and he became aphasic, put together the book in a very nice way. So I think it's a wonderful book and one of his richest, deepest ones. So if after I talk for a few minutes, if anybody is actually looking at the book and has read parts and wants to discuss part of it, I'm happy to answer or talk about any questions you may have. The first chapter that he's talking about right now is about emptiness. Now, with everything in the Dharma, the most important thing is that we verify for ourselves these truths. It does not matter if it's intellectually sound, although I think it is quite intellectually sound. It does not matter if somebody else understands it. It only makes a difference if it relieves the suffering that we are feeling right now, enabling us to have a bright, clear, open mind that is of service and can help others and engage in our lives. So every teaching of the Dharma is about practice and verification. So each person, everything you've heard about the Dharma came out of someone's direct experience, and we are not different than they are. It may be that there are people who are great mathematic prodigies and we can't touch the limits, but we can definitely understand all the fundamentals the best our particular karma enables us to. And that direct understanding of the Dharma is what's really most important. So I give a talk, we'll talk about emptiness tonight, but what is it? What is the experience of it? How does that teaching relate to freedom, to liberation? So the place that we're going to begin this evening, his first chapter in the Art of Living is on emptiness, and he says that it is the primary investigation for liberation. Now, emptiness, when they first started translating Buddhist texts back in the 1800s, they began using the word void. And they would say, the Dharma is about voidness. And then people said, well, voidness isn't quite right. If you have a cup, you have to have the cup before you can have an empty cup. So then they began using the word emptiness, because emptiness has more accuracy, more availability than voidness does. But emptiness is also an idea. So emptiness is predicated on somethingness. Again, if you have a box, the box is empty, you still have a box. So the emptiness that we're talking about is not nothingness. It's not voidness, it's not nothingness. It's the emptiness, it's the insubstantiality of whatever we're turning our attention to. And in this case, we're first starting off with the body. So in order to see the emptiness of the body, you got to have a body. And so that's where we always start with practice. And we always start with practices sit here, feel this body, feel with loving kindness and appreciation. This body is the result of all the actions that we've done over our lifetime. Good, bad, and different. It is the result. It is the karmic conclusion of everything that has happened to us and actually beyond us in this lifetime. So we always start with, okay, you sit down and say, right here, what's the experience of the breath? What's the experience of my being alive? So the first part of practice, everybody who comes to practice, they get introduced and we talk about, follow the breath and feel the breath and be present and be in the present moment. Absolutely essential, absolutely essential. But emptiness is the teaching of emptiness is predicated upon this kind of inner stability first. They say in some parts of the tradition that teaching emptiness to people who are not ready is not of service to them, because it says that we're not personally responsible. But the reality is we have this body, we are personally responsible, we're the ones who get to meet the circumstances of our lives, and that is sacred. Now, the other piece, of course, is what is this body and who am I? And so the first place that with emptiness that we talk about it, well, who am I? And the way we can look at that is, well, what am I made of? So what are we made of? Water. Lots of water, H2O, molecules of oxygen and hydrogen stuck together and floating in big clumps. What are we made of? Meat. Proteins, amino acids, all strung together in striated muscles. Light. Everything is, the electromagnetic field is streaming into us. Everything that we see is made of light. And if we look more deeply, everything that we can experience is made of some part of the electromagnetic field. What are we made of? Thoughts, of course. One of the five aggregate six senses is thought. If you've got a human body and it's breathing and you're walking around but you don't have the ability to think, you're not quite human. So to be a human means you think. So we're partly made up of thought. What's thought made up of?
Awareness.
Thought's made up of awareness. Words. Sensations. Well, thoughts about sensations perhaps, words about sensations. But just looking at thoughts. Past, present, and future. So thoughts made of memory and judgments, and thoughts of past, present, and future, and concepts and ideation and words, and thought. Everything is made up of something else. So we're made up of 1 trillion cells. So they say. I'm sure nobody has sat down and counted them all. They probably took a little microscopic sample, maybe 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, and a micron thick, and they counted the cells in that, and they multiplied it by, and said, this is how many cells there are in a human body. Who knows? I don't at least. But we're made up of, they say, trillions of cells. Trillions of cells. So I used to hear these numbers, 1 trillion, our national debt is what, $8 trillion or something like that. How much money is that? So 1 billion is if you take one copper penny and we stack them up, 1 copper penny, and we stack up a football field full of buses. Buses 20 feet high, 20 feet wide, 40 feet long. That's 1 billion. A football field full of buses. Football field of pennies, the size of buses. 1 billion. 1 trillion is about the size of the Empire State Building. Is that right? Maybe the size of the World Trade Center before it was blown up. I can't quite remember. It's enormous. Enormous. We are made of an enormous number, an incomprehensible number of cells. We have cells, and we have all the different kinds of cells, and we have blood flowing and lymph flowing, and we have hormones flowing, and We have sodium flowing. We have all kinds of things moving in our body. And interesting enough, it's all working together. Isn't it amazing? It all works together. 1 trillion cells in harmony, digesting our food, thinking thoughts, all working together. It's astounding. It's astounding. We're also made up of history. We have brought whatever our particular history is, our ethnic origin, the family history, the history of wherever we grew up. It's also part of who we are. Somebody who has no history, well, you've never met anybody with no history. Nobody who's not been conditioned in some way by the world as they know it. Everybody has their own particular conditioning. So we're made up of the past, we're made up of all the components of the present, and we are the future too. That's a different issue. So when we say emptiness, and we're made up of 1 trillion cells, what we're saying is everything is in flux. All 1 trillion of those cells are constantly moving. Our thoughts are constantly moving. We can't hold on to one thought. It's constantly moving. It's constantly morphing. It's constantly changing. Who we think we are. We look at ourselves in the mirror in the morning and we think one thing, and we look at ourselves at night and we think another thing. And we pass ourselves. It's always surprising if you pass yourself inadvertently and see yourself in a mirror out of the kind of corner of your eye, think, who is that person? Because what we really look like is not at all what we think we look like. None of us see one another the same way we see ourselves. So we've made up of an infinite number of things, all working in harmony, and that very working together is what we mean by emptiness. It's flowing. It's flowing. It's constantly flowing, constantly changing. Our thoughts are changing. Our views are changing. Our history is changing. As somebody who's a septuagenarian right now, my life, my early life when I was 20 was very different than my early life when I was 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. I assume it's the same early life, but my view of it just shifts. Each generation, my life shifts. Each generation, it looks anew. So Thich Naht Hanh says in this first chapter that if when we can actually see things as they are, then in looking at them directly, we don't see lumps. We see a shimmering field of possibility, a shimmering field of history, a shimmering field, which may act with our shimmering field in a frictionless or frictional way. Mostly depends upon us on whether it's friction-free or frictional. But life is a shimmering field. So if we are sitting in meditation and we're actually feeling the body and thinking, what is it I'm actually feeling when I feel the body? And we're intimately feeling the body. First thing we feel is that there's breath, there's muscle tension, there's all those things, I'm sitting erect or whatever. But if we start feeling it more intimately, we get to a place where there is a tingling aliveness. A tingling aliveness that permeates our body. There is a tingling aliveness that can be directly seen and known by ourselves, with ourselves. Perhaps we call that light. The tingling aliveness is the way I like to think of it. I like to think of it as tingling aliveness because that's a visceral experience. We can actually feel the tingling of the isness of our being. And it's alive. It's got motion. I have the very good fortune of having an office that looks out, has a window in it that looks out on a bird feeder. And we've been feeding birds there, and right now we'll get, we might get 40 or 50 yellow chickadees that come in, or American finches, or goldfinches, or we might get, grosbeaks. Like we've been getting quail, quail with the little feathers that bop on their head. And then we'll have 8 chipmunks and a squirrel and all kinds of living beings. And I was looking at all that, this enormous amount of movement, all these beings being fed and flying away and coming in. What is it like? What is life? Is life just movement? If that's so, is the movement in my body, movement in your body, the same as the movement of the trees and the wind? It's all movement. It's all flow. Is the movement in my mind the same as the movement at the bird feeders? Is the tingling aliveness in my body, where I feel everything I see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, is imbued with the tingling aliveness of my own experience. When we begin to see ourselves as space in which there is tingling aliveness, a field of awareness, somehow the friction that we feel when we keep encountering the world that we don't like and people that we don't like is ameliorated, is lessened. There's nothing out there. Then Thich Naht Hanh talks about space. So between any two things, there's space. I mean, that's what makes two things, right? They're not the same, so there's space. So if there's the left nostril and the right nostril, there's got to be space between them in order to have a left and right. Left eye, left ear, left side of a molecule, right side of a molecule, 2 molecules, 3 molecules. There's space. If things exist, they only exist because of separation, because there's space. Where is that space? Where is that space? Can I see? Can I feel? Can I investigate? And can I know the spacious nature in which the tingling aliveness, in which all things are, the spacious nature of the field of awareness? And that's the whole practice in itself. You can have there's a number of different practices here that you can do. First off, we have the practice of being stable and present in this body. Then the practice of feeling the body breathing us. And we're not doing the breathing, we are being breathed, feeling that. And then we feel the whole body, and we can feel the whole body and begin to realize that the boundaries that we create are created by our mind. That sensorially speaking, we can't actually find boundaries. Touch the boundaryless, touch the several different other things you can touch. But to see a field of a living awareness that is imbued with space. And sometimes we can actually have the experience of just the spacious mind. There's just space. All thoughts stop and there's just space. Usually people have those kind of experiences when they're doing long retreats. If they can get beyond the critical mind that's always thinking. Now there is would you get my iPad for me? Yeah. Now, so as we're working with emptiness, and we begin to look at the emptiness of who we think we are, it does not mean that the cup isn't there, right? It does not mean that we don't have our particular karmic personality, we don't have our particular way of being in the world. It does not mean that. But it means that it's not fixed. It's got some fluidity in it. And Thich Naht Hanh, thank you. Thich Naht Hanh at one time was contemplating he had this contemplation about, well, who am I? Okay, if I can feel the field of tingling aliveness, and I can feel that there is space, and I can realize that the space between me and others, the space between the tingling aliveness of me and others, the space in the field, it's one field filled with space. Then he says that if you really see emptiness, you stop seeing others. And so the number of threats in your mind, your world begin to diminish. And the way he talks about that is he has this poem which was Please Call Me By My True Names. The story about the poem, he says, is in the 1970s. He was in the Vietnamese peace office in Paris, and he heard that some of the Vietnamese boat people who were trying to escape from Vietnam after the war, had been on a large boat, and it was very dangerous because of the waves, and they didn't have enough food or water often, and there were pirates. And so there were pirates that attacked this boat, and they raped a young girl, and the girl's father tried to prevent that, and he got thrown overboard and drowned. And then after the rape, the girl threw herself overboard and drowned. And then the pirates, did what pirates do. They escaped with everything they wanted. And Thich Naht Hanh heard this, and he said, "Oh, this is so tragic. This is so sad." And we hear things all day long, if we're paying attention to the news, about the terrible things that human beings have done to human beings. So he was reflecting on the terrible things that human beings do to human beings, whether it be in the Sudan or South Africa, whether it be in Russia or the Ukraine, whether it be in Rwanda or wherever, reflecting on the terrible things that human beings do to human beings. And he took this teaching of emptiness, this teaching of not fixed, and he said, I would like to go in and understand the parts of me that are cruel, the parts of me that are irrational, the parts of me that are predatory. And so he wrote this poem called Please Call Me By My True Name. So Thich Naht Hanh, don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today I am still arriving. Don't say I will die tomorrow, I will live, I will be gone tomorrow. Today I'm still arriving, still arriving. Look deeply. Every second I'm arriving to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh, to cry, to fear, to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. Let's ponder that. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. If we see new birth, if we see new life, if we see the verdant green of spring, if we see the fledgling birds that are flying around the monastery, if we see that which recognizes the freshness and newness of life is not someplace else. That which recognizes the freshness and newness, which recognizes spring, which recognizes babies, which recognizes the incipient possibility of life, is found right here. It's imminent, intimate. So recognizing everything that we see not only has a correspondence in here, but also is experienced very intimately. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am the mayflower metamorphosing on the surface of the river. I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond. And I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. Both the predator and the prey. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. How can he say something like that? How can we appreciate that? I am the child in Uganda. So we can go inside ourselves and we think, have I ever been hungry? Have I ever been lost? Have I ever been deeply afraid? And we go into the part of ourselves that have been hungry and lost and deeply afraid. And we allow ourselves to feel it. hungry, lost, deeply afraid. We allow the fear that's there. We allow the hopelessness that's there. We feel it. And that, when we feel it deeply enough, that feeling is the same feeling that other people have in that same situation. We can feel their pain right here. And then we can feel the part of somebody who's a businessman, whose only job is to sell things, whether it be AI or whether it be technology, whether it be arms, that their particular construction of their mind is made in a certain kind of way, has a sense of power to it, a sense of efficacy, a sense of purpose, or in the realms of existence. We have the ability to stop and to put ourselves without judgment in any circumstance or with anybody in the world. If we are full of judgments and say, oh, never, that's not me, I can't be like that, it doesn't work. We have to have an open mind that realizes the connection of all things, and then we can pull in any being, any person, any situation. Like, what's it feel like? What's the experience? What do I know about it? Where is it here? And then, of course, we let it go. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo, with plenty of power in my hands, and I'm the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the four oceans. Please call me by my true names, so that I can hear all my cries and my laughter at once, so I can see my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up. And so the door of my heart can be left open to the door of compassion. The door of my heart can be left open. That is the door of compassion. Please call me by my true name so I can wake up. And so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. So in Buddhism, we often talk about that the nature of the true self is loving kindness. The four immeasurables: loving kindness, sympathetic joy, compassion, and equanimity. And to have loving kindness and sympathetic joy means that we have to have the ability to appreciate each person's situation. Somehow their particular karmic history, that piece of the world they embodied. Because the whole world, everything has a place in the world. Everything has a place in the cosmos. And so some people grew up stunted. And that has a place in the cosmos. And there's a place in us that resonates with it. It's not separate. And someone else grew up with a heart of loving kindness and big. And there's a place in us that's like that too. That we ignore, that we have So when he says, call me by my true names, it means we are everything in the world. All the richness of this world is in us. And of course, it does not mean that when we can feel something, we can feel aggression or violence. It does not mean that's how we act. It means we can understand and we can have compassion for someone who is caught and deluded, thinking that is who they are. So this practice of empathy, this practice of emptiness, is a practice of letting go of fixed views. It's a practice of spaciousness. It's a practice of fluidity. A practice of not being stuck. It's a practice of kindness and generosity. So we're still working on chapter 1.
Thank you for listening to the Zen Community of Oregon podcast, and thank you for your practice. New episodes air every week. Please consider making a donation at zendust.org. Your support supports us.